Are you a hardworking dad, juggling family responsibilities while dreaming of building wealth through real estate? Welcome to the Invested Fathers Podcast, where we explore how to balance investing and fatherhood. I'm your host, Kenny Johnson, founder of East West Capital. Over the past 5 years, I've been buying real estate to free up my time and secure my family's future. Now I'm here to help you do the same. Join me as we navigate the real estate world together, building wealth and strengthening our families. As my grandma always said, East West, home's best.
My son is a full-blown miracle. Long story short, he had a moment where we just said, we're not going to stop praying for this kid until he moves, right? And within 4 minutes, he started moving the right side of his body, and now he's made 100% recovery. I took 4.5 months off during that time to go all in on my family, took my hands off the wheel. Don't regret it for a second. My son made a remarkable recovery. A lot of people on his medical team were like, this is not possible. And I knew it was possible. But during that 4.5 months, I lost about 40% of my net worth in the stock market.
Welcome to a brand new Monday bonus episode on the Invested Fathers that I just couldn't wait to release. Our normal schedule is to air guest episodes on Wednesdays. But after recently recording with Caleb, my good friend, I wanted to share our conversation as soon as I could. Caleb's story is nothing short of remarkable on multiple fronts. So our conversation will inspire you as a father, as a doer, and will also bring some eternal value into your faith for whatever season of life you are finding yourself in today. And now for the Monday bonus episode, episode 9. Caleb, good morning. How are you, man?
Man, I'm doing great, Kenny. Thanks for having me on your show.
Caleb, tell us about what's going on in your business right now.
Yeah, so my company with my partner, Aaron Leatherdale, we buy and build large apartment complexes. We just closed an offering and broke ground on a 312 unit Class A development apartments and with 36 townhomes on the backside down in Bentonville, Arkansas. We raise capital for investors. To do that, we have a network of investors that are kind of like-minded, have a lot of similar values as what Aaron and I have. And we raised about, somewhere around $11 million for that project. And then now we are right in the middle of the next one, getting ready to break ground in the fall on a 289 unit luxury Class A development here in the Kansas City market, which is where we're based. And so a lot of work involved in that. My side of the business, Kenny, is the equity side. So I work with investors as well as our platform of fund managers. And, which I know you've connected with us on that front as well. We've built a friendship and a relationship through doing some work together. And so it's a lot of fun. But yeah, that's kind of a little recap of our business and kind of what's going on with us.
Yeah, I like to let everyone know where you're at today. But now I want you to go back. How did we get here? If you can maybe list the few stepping stones or like the career path. And I know you could go really deep into this just because I'm sure we all have a very intricate story of our mindsets and how things evolved and changed. But, where did you start out? And obviously we know where you are now, but how did you get there?
Yeah, so I am going to go pretty far back because I think it's important to sort of, the framework of how I became an entrepreneur, right? My grandfather, who passed away a couple years ago, it was a huge influence on my life. You talk a lot on your podcast about fathers. I had a great relationship with my father, but my grandfather was also a big father figure to me as well. And he worked as a pipe welder for an energy company, right? So he, welded pipes in power plants and contracted asbestosis in his lungs, was part of a class action settlement for that and got a couple $100,000, nothing life changing. He never made that kind of money or had that kind of money though. So, getting a couple $100,000 settlement was meaningful to him. So he paid off some debt. And one of the things he wanted to do was take his entire family, never been able to do it, take his entire family on a vacation together. So he rented a big house in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, which is where I'm originally from. And we all went out, cousins, aunts, uncles, everybody. And we went into this big house. The first night we were there, I'd been looking, kind of planning on all the things I wanted to do, asking questions. I wanted to go deep sea fishing. I wanted to do all these different things, right? And he sat us all down and he gave all of us kids $100 bill. And he said, I want y'all to have fun. I want you guys, this is your spending money for the week. And I was like, I'm rich, right? I got this $100. But then I started thinking through all the things that I wanted to do on that trip. And I was like, $100 ain't going to be enough. So I got to figure something out. So we went to a flea market the next morning, and at the time it was really popular with kids my age. I was probably 9 or 10 years old. The seashell necklaces, you know, the ones that Kenny Chesney made popular, made famous. Well, I had one of those, and I saw this lady who was selling them, and she had like a box of 10 of them. And so I negotiated my first deal with her. I got her to sell me all 10 seashell necklaces for $10, right? And in that afternoon, we all go out on the beach. All the other kids are playing in the sand and playing in the water. I put those seashell necklaces up my arm and walked up and down the beach looking for folks that seemed like maybe they were retired couples and probably had grandkids. And I walked up and I introduced myself. Hi, I'm Caleb. I'm here with my family. It's the first time I've ever been here. Do you have grandkids? Yeah, well, we've got 3 grandkids. Oh, I bet you're probably going to be getting them a souvenir from here, aren't you? Yeah. And so then I went through my whole sales pitch, and I told him, I was like, hey, I've got these seashell necklaces. I know that kids my age love these. These are the thing right now. And you can buy these all over the island for probably $5 a piece at any souvenir shop. Or you could stay here in your beach chair, not have to leave, and you can buy them from me for 10 and know that they're going, you know, it's going to a good cause. And I sold out of seashell necklaces in less than an hour, right? I was like, why would anyone ever go take an hourly job if they could just do this? Now, obviously, I've had hourly jobs, you know, different things like that over my lifetime. And there's value to that, and I'm not knocking that, but that unlocked entrepreneurship for me. And it was as simple as this. If I can identify something that people desire and find the right person who desires it and present it in a way that makes them feel better about doing it with me than doing it with someone else, then there's no limit to what I can accomplish in terms of the money I can make and the life that I can live. And so shortly after that, my parents ended up separating. And for the first time, my mom had to go work outside of the house. She had to get a job at a Cracker Barrel as a server. And I saw her struggling financially. I was probably 11 years old by this point. And I decided, well, I want to help. I don't want to see my mom struggling. And so I went out into our shed and repaired an old push lawnmower that had been sitting out there for a few years. And I made a little flyer and I hung it up at a local gas station. And I got my first 3 clients for my landscaping company. By the time I was 12, I had a full client list. I hired 2 of my buddies as employees. I did that middle school, high school, college, all the way up to age 26. We were operating, you know, a full-scale landscaping firm, and exited that business at age 26. And along the way, I'd done quite a bit of real estate and some other business ventures as well. You know, I had all the energy, you know, of a teenager and a young 20-something-year-old. And so I just was always hustling, right? I think I did my first fix and flip when I was like 18 or 19 years old, and you know, got my real estate license and all those different things, right? So I've been involved in real estate for, you know, as long as it was legal for me to actually be involved in real estate. And stuff. But then at 26, I ended up exiting my you know, my business and went and spent the next 10 years in nonprofit Christian missions work. So I did a lot of both domestic and international missions for about 10 years. But I like to tell people you can take the boy out of the business, but you can't take the business out of the boy. And so I was always finding ways to scratch that entrepreneurial itch, side business, or I eventually bought some more real estate, rental properties. And at one point I was actively swing trading in the stock market actually for about 5 years. I actually did pretty good. I self-taught myself YouTube and different things like that on technical analysis and came up with a whole strategy to try to match market movers and different things like that. And had a year where I got like 119% return across my stock portfolio. I was riding high, feeling great about it. Everything was awesome, right? But the problem was that I was very active and hands-on in doing that stock trading. I spend hours a day filtering through dozens of picks to make a single trade. Right. And so it's a lot of analysis, a lot of work, a lot of hands on the wheel, a lot of time, effort, attention. And although it wasn't physically demanding, it was certainly mentally demanding, but still feeling really good about it. Right. But then around, it was 2021, my son Zion at 9 months old suffered an ultra rare pediatric stroke in the left side of his brain, rendered the whole right side of his body completely paralyzed, and it completely wiped me out. Right. He was in the hospital in ICU for close to 3 weeks, and he didn't move the right side of his body. most of the doctors and everything, his whole medical team was essentially saying if the neuroplasticity was going to kick in for a stroke of this severity, then he would have shown the movement by this point. He's probably not going to get very much movement back, if any. He may be in a wheelchair. He may never walk. He may not even be able to talk, things like that. And I just, I went into an emotional hole, right? I spun out. I took my hands off the wheel of everything. And I had to go all in and give every bit of attention that I could to my son, to my two daughters, to my family. And now my son is a full-blown miracle. And I can expound on the story at another time. But long story short, he had a moment where we just said, we're not going to stop praying for this kid until he moves, right? And within 4 minutes, he started moving the right side of his body, and now he's made 100% recovery. I took 4.5 months off during that time, again, to go all in on my family, took my hands off the wheel. Don't regret it for a second. My son, made a remarkable recovery. A lot of people on his medical team were like, this is not possible. And I knew it was possible. But during that 4.5 months, I lost about 40% of my net worth in the stock market. And I started looking and realizing once the dust had settled and I started to come out of that season, I've got to find a better way, a smarter way to build wealth for my family in a way that doesn't require my constant attention and active involvement, right? I don't have to analyze trades for hours a day just to kind of move the needle one tick forward, right? I needed something that I could rely on a team, something that was stable, something that would give me the double-digit returns that I'd grown used to, something that, wasn't going to have the kind of volatility that if I had to step away from it and not be as active or hands-on in it for a period of time, that it wasn't going to just lose half of its value overnight. I couldn't find that in the stock market. And so the only thing that stayed working for me during that time was my real estate. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go all in on real estate. And that was kind of what led me to where we are now. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine who had been a multifamily operator for years, had a lot of success, did really well, had a team in place already. And I, had told him kind of what was going on, what I was learning. I had invested in a couple of apartment syndications as a limited partner and had learned a lot. And just through kind of, I think, divine intervention and great timing, he had a pain point in his business that I had the skill set to solve. And so we ended up partnering up in Oak IQ Investments to launch the equity division, which I lead and head up. Since that time, we've been able to grow and scale the company to about 150 million in apartment assets under our management. We've placed about $40 million in investor capital into our deals. We are on a tremendous growth trajectory. All of our deals are going good. A lot of investors who have invested in these types of deals have experienced losses of capital or experienced capital costs. We've only used fixed rate debt. We've done a lot of different things to try to, mitigate a lot of risk for investors. It's one thing to lose your own money, but, losing someone else's money, no way, right? And so, so we try to put a lot of things in place for that. But yeah, I mean, I know that's kind of almost a life story, and maybe you didn't want all of that, but yeah, I think I hit those pivotal moments, right? Though of how the trajectory of my life and business and all of that has gotten us to this point.
Yeah, Caleb, that's everything you said was very helpful. And what I'm trying to do, as we hear your story, we see, okay, you've been around the block. This is we learned about how you're wired. We learned about, hey, what were your interests? You started the seashell business first, went into landscaping, and it wasn't just like I did landscaping for 6 months and I realized this isn't cool. You said you did that throughout your, growing years. I mean, I think about my high school and college.
I ran that business for 15 years.
Okay, that's a huge amount of time, but you started so young. So you're learning, you're putting these reps, your mind is being shaped. And then you pivoted into the nonprofit Christian faith-centered space. But like you said, the boy still had the business inside you. It wasn't taken out. And obviously now, real estate or the stock market, figuring out, hey, I'm good at this. I'm making money in this, but I'm still not happy. There's a pain point in time. Is there something else I can do? Use my skills? And yeah, you clocked out for 4.5 months because of life situations and you lost a lot of money. So I'm loving the pivots that you're doing and like the refining of your mind of like what should I be doing? What's working? And you're just adapting and growing and evolving is another word I like to say, but it's
Yeah.
awesome. I love it. So we know a lot more about you now. Um, let's talk about the family and the fatherhood aspect of it. Because, you mentioned your dad. I think we could talk a little bit, if it's okay, about, you mentioned your parents went through a divorce. You were young, 9, I think is what you said.
Yeah, it was 9 or 10.
How
Yeah.
has the like fatherhood role been shaped from being a son from your dad? And what are some things that you're either incorporating or changing or doing as a dad today?
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. And it's probably a more complex answer because when I was younger, before my parents separated, I had a decent relationship with my dad. We did all the things you would think of that a father and a son would do, right? We went fishing together. We did those kind of things. He worked really hard, and I always understood, that he wasn't at home as much. I was with mom most of the time. I probably was more of a mama's boy, right? And then get into teenage years, and I was dead set on my goals. I was a very busy teenager, a great student, made great grades, but also was, running a business a lot of that time. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so it was unique during the teenage years. Definitely had a strained relationship with my father during that time. Didn't spend as much time with him. He and I butted heads a lot. And so there were a lot of things that I learned not to do as a father through that. But then a lot of that was my arrogant teenage years. Then when I get into my 20s, um, I kind of accepted some things about my dad. My dad grew up really poor,
Mhm.
like really poor, like in a like third world level poor in the US, right? 10 brothers and sisters. He lived in a 2-room house, not a 2-bedroom house, a 2-room house. And his dad, my late grandfather, not the one I already mentioned, right? That was on my mom's side. The grandfather on my dad's side, he was a World War II veteran and had PTSD and
Mm.
became an alcoholic and chased my dad around their house with an axe trying to kill him because he didn't know who he was, and just all kinds of intense things that happened to my father. And his father, worked at a sawmill because of his PTSD and alcoholism. He couldn't really get another job. He worked at a sawmill making like 50 cents an hour trying to support a family of 11. And so my dad grew up really poor as a result. And so then when my dad was like 13 years old, he just got tired of it and he left and got a job at a convenience store and bought himself a car and started driving himself back and forth to work at like age 13 or 14 and became kind of the man of his house very early on. And so I didn't know all of the pieces of my dad's story. Even the pieces that I did, I didn't put it all together. I didn't have the intelligence or the emotional intelligence to understand how that kind of life could shape a person. And then I began to look back in my early 20s, late teens, 19, 20, 21. And I had a few moments of kind of revelation about my dad that I was like, wow, my dad, like, for him to have worked and done what he's done to provide for my family and have been there as much as he was and all of that, like, that was an insane leap from what the example that was set for him to the example that he set for me. And so I started to have a whole lot more gratitude for my father. And as a result, there was a lot of mending of that relationship that happened. And now my relationship with my dad, for the last 17 to 20 years has been really, really good. And I've seen a lot of amazing things in my father.
Thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah.
Wow, you're right on complexity, dude. That's and that's I've learned when I'm hosting this platform and I'm asking people, it's amazing how our dads have shaped, regardless of I mean, whether they were there or they're not there, it shaped us. And I even saw something on Instagram or something the other day. My wife sent me, first 10 years of your life is a very important shaping time. The first 10 years of your life, the role of the dad is just instrumental in how we're grown. And you have this sense of work ethic and busybody, not in a negative way, but you're changing things. You're a mover, you're a shaker. And
Yeah.
your dad's background of, goodness gracious, all the kids and his dad having, PTSD, and him starting this thing at 13. It's like, I can't help but think like your son is going to be a very hard worker with these levels in his blood there. But so that helps me a lot in understanding, first off, that resolve in your life of, there was some maybe bitterness or some hard times, relationship was strained. As you grew up, you started learning, maybe more of the why in the story there. Now you have kids. How many kids do you have and how old are they?
I have 3 kids, and they are 6, 5, and almost 4. So
Okay.
yeah, and that's I mean, that's pretty crazy. You heard a little bit of the miracle story of my son, but my 2 daughters are bona fide miracles as well. And that sort of leads into why the value that I have for fatherhood and why I'm more committed to being a father than I am being anything else, to be honest with you. My wife and I were married for almost 10 years and we're not able to get pregnant, right? It didn't seem like it was going to be biologically possible. And we had known even since before we got married that we were going to adopt a baby one day. But we thought, oh, we'll have biological kids first, then we'll adopt. That was kind of our plan. I think that's what anyone who wants to adopt, that's sort of the plan. And, you know, over 9 years of failed pregnancy tests, we just finally got to kind of a point where we're like, okay, maybe God wants us to adopt now. And so we started that journey, and it wasn't it was never a plan B for us. It was always part of the plan. It was just the timing of when it was going to happen. So we started that journey. It took a lot longer than we thought it would, but we ended up getting matched. We got a call December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas of 2017, that we were matched with a baby girl that was going to be born at the end of February, early March. She ended up coming on March 6th, 2018. And a month before we had her, a month before she was born, we went to the doctor to get our home study renewed. We had to do several things to get our adoption home study renewed, go to the doctor, get another background check, do all that kind of stuff. And during that process, we found out that my wife was pregnant. And so we had our first daughter on March 6th, 2018. And then 7 months later, we had our second daughter on October 16th. And so, obviously our first daughter, her miracle story was that her birth mother was homeless and had already had 2 abortions and was walking to the clinic to have a 3rd abortion. It was cold outside. She stepped into a post office to warm up, and she saw a 3x5 mailer that had fallen on the floor in the post office, and she picked it up because what it said on the front of it was, "Considering abortion, call us instead." So she picks up a payphone and she calls that number, and that number was our adoption agency. And so it ended up, our adoption agency was right across the street from this post office. They walked over, they met with her, they brought her into the office. They were able to talk to her, to, kind of minister to her, help her. And she made the brave decision to keep the baby. And so Kayla and I, my wife, we were able to, provide some support to help cover some housing for her during the pregnancy, to help cover some food, some different things like that, some of the doctor's visits, all that kind of stuff that is within the realm of what is like legal.
Mm-hmm.
However, we tried to provide that support as much as we could for her. We never met her. She didn't want to have a relationship with us or Isla, our daughter. She wanted it to be a closed adoption. That was her choice. But that's how our first baby girl, Isla, came into the world. She was on the way, her life being terminated in the womb. And God intervened and, snatched her out of that and put her in our family. So then, before she was even born, though, we find out that the couple that is not able to get pregnant is suddenly miraculously pregnant.
Right.
And so
It's amazing.
our little girl Ivy comes a few months later. And so I'm telling you the story of my kids to tell you this, why I lean into fatherhood with the passion and conviction that I do. because I know you're a Christian, I'm a Christian, and I try not to shy away from sharing those values in any chance that I have and giving glory to God any opportunity that I have. But there's a lot in the Bible where we see everything that happens up to the point where the miracle takes place, right? We see the blind man given sight. We see the lame man able to walk. We see, the demoniac delivered in the cave. And then we don't ever really see what happens next, right? It's like, go and sin no more. And then their story's over in terms of what we can see. And what the Lord has really taught me through having 3 miracle children is a lot of the church loves the idea of praying for a miracle and seeing a miracle happen. And even when I share my story, people, whether they're Christians or not, always marvel at those miracle moments. But the thing that God's been teaching me about is there's a stewardship of the miracle, right? And after the blind man gets sight, he just inherited a brand new set of responsibilities of what is he going to do with his eyes for the rest of his life, right? His sight is significant, more significant than the person that's had it their entire life. There's a reason why he didn't have it for so long, and then God broke in and gave it to him. And it wasn't just so that he could see things. It was because he had purpose to steward that miracle, right? The same with the lame man, right? Now he's been laying around on a mat his whole life, and it was miserable for him, I'm sure. But now he's got the stewardship of, okay, you can walk now, buddy. What are you going to do with your legs? Where are you going to go? Right? And so when I look at all 3 of my children, I have this kind of sobriety that rests on me. I'm like, yes, I look back and I'm so grateful and I'm joy-filled for the miracle that each of them experienced, the miracle that they are. But then I feel the sobriety of, okay, God gave me 3 miracles to steward, to shepherd, and there's a reason why their stories are so dramatic. And it's not so that I can just have cool stories to tell on podcasts and give people like some feels. You know what I mean? Like their lives have a certain amount of significance, and I was chosen to be their father, the one that would be their covering and the one that would teach them and show them and lead them on how to do life, right? And set them up for success in whatever God has for them. And so when I look at their life, I think in terms of, I have an obligation, a sacred obligation endowed upon me by my Creator to be present, to be active, to be involved, to be an invested father, right?
Right.
There should be a podcast called Invested Father.
Dude, oh wait, I started that one. No, I'm resonating wholeheartedly with what you're saying. I mean, I can't help it. The forefront of mind is you guys tried to have kids for 9 years. I mean, was that just 9 years? That went by kind of quick. No, that was like probably.
This is going to be the only expletive you've probably ever had on this show. And I'm going to say, hell, what's not?
I don't know if I'm going to edit that out or not. I think we needed that one. We needed to give the full weight of that.
That's it.
No, I mean, and I know we're laughing right now, but I can only.
No, it was horrible.
Only imagine.
And 9 years of failed pregnancy tests, disappointments. I mean, through that entire process, what I didn't share was we had 4 failed adoptions prior to our daughter's adoption actually happening. So it was really, really difficult.
Yeah.
It was the hardest thing we had ever been through until we went through what we went through with my son when he had, and so, that's part of the weight that I feel though, is like, we had to go through a really, really hard, painful, disappointing decade in order to get our children, in order to have our family. And so then when I get those kids, I'm like, I'm not going to be the entrepreneur anymore that works 80 hours a week. I'm just not. So how have I been able to do it? Right. It's kind of like the work balance conversation that we were having before we went live, right? How I literally have to hack how my mind and how I get work done. And so I literally time block every minute of my work day, right? I am, not minute by minute, but you get what I'm saying. Like, I don't put any white space on my calendar, because every single moment that I'm away from my family needs to be used intentionally. And I have this joke that I tell my business partner all the time. He'll call me with like kind of visionary ideas, dream, all that kind of stuff. And I'm into all that stuff. Like, I'm in it, but I'm like, those conversations need to be blocked into my calendar. We need to have those conversations at designated times, because if we don't, I end up telling him, I'm getting off the phone with him. I'm like, all right, bro, because of this call, I've got 8 hours of work to do and I've only got 4 hours of work to do it in. So then I go and I just go into a deep work mode and I get it done.
Yeah.
Because I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm going to have dinner with my family every night. I'm not going to work weekends. I'm going to, I'm going to be with them all day on Saturday. I'm not going to pick up my phone. I'm not going to open my computer. I'm not going to take a work call. I'm not going to do any of it. And it's not because I don't value my work. It's because I do. But at the end of the day, if someone said, hey, put a gun to my head, you can pick one, your business or your family, it's like a no freaking brainer.
Oh, man.
I think any father who would even hesitate at that, like, probably needs gut check.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Two things. First is, you mentioned the decade of awfulness.
Disappointment.
Disappointment. There's people out there that are in that right now.
Yeah.
I mean, because we're talking, hey, we're at the end of the tunnel. We can look back and, joke a little bit and laugh, but people are in it right now. And maybe they want to be at home on Saturdays or, the meals. And for whatever reason, they're feeling trapped or they're having a hard time. What can we say to them?
Yeah. Disappointment is a gift. And here's why. I had this moment where I realized this during that season. We had just had our third failed adoption. And I had this moment where I realized it, and this all really comes down to having the anchor of faith, right? I have this anchor that rests inside of me that says, eternity is in front of me. When I die, everything's not over, right? I truly believe that. So when I look at it, I say, okay, in my eternal existence, my eternal life, I have 80, 90 years of that eternal life where I'm going to experience disappointment. The rest of it, I'm never going to experience it again. I'm going to live in eternal bliss where there are no tears, there is no pain. And so then when I look at it, it's like, let's say I live to be 100. I only have 100 years of a billion of year existence in life where I get to experience disappointment and still choose to say that God is good. And that's a gift that I have that I can offer to my Creator, who has blessed me exceedingly abundantly, far greater than I could ask, think, or imagine. I have an offering that I can give to Him that for billions of years after I die, I'll never be able to give that to Him again. And so having that realization of faith is an anchor and disappointment is a gift, right? My faith helps me to maintain perspective in the midst of disappointment, which allows me to see that no matter how bad this hurts, there is an opportunity in the middle of it that I won't have the opportunity forever. Even in this life, let's say you're listening to this podcast and you don't believe what I believe. You believe that when you die, everything's over. Well, still, that 10 years of disappointment was anchored in the fact that I couldn't have a family. And now I have 3 kids, and I'll never have that season again where I'm disappointed that I don't have those kids. So now I can look back on that season and see, okay, what did I choose to do in that season that of disappointment, in that decade of disappointment? What did I choose to do to find the good in the midst of the mess? Because even if you're not a person of faith, that's a really good exercise to help you, succeed at life later. So many of us get bogged down in the moment that we're in, and we don't realize that there is no failure. There's only an opportunity to go to another level, right? To be better in the next season. But if you don't dig in and find the thing to be grateful for in the dark night, right? And the decade of disappointment and the pain. If you don't make it a practice to dig inside and find what is there that I can be grateful for. I would tell myself this, but then I would tell my wife, I'd be like, imagine the story that we're going to have one day when we have all our babies.
Mm-hmm.
That's something we can be grateful for, right?
Yeah.
That this can come easily for us. But I would also say folks that are in that place of pain, like, don't feel like you have to have an answer for it. Just allow yourself to feel it, allow yourself to experience it, get really honest about where you're at, but then find something to be grateful for.
Yeah. I know that's kind of a tough question. Thank you.
Yeah.
One other thing that I'm really curious about your response to this, you had a decade of disappointment. You've achieved $40 million of equity into this $150 million portfolio. You can look back and be like, man, I have financial freedom. I love my work. Work's not the enemy. So it's not like I just need to go to the beach all day. I have 3 beautiful kids. I love my marriage. Where's the next step in your mindset? Is there this consistent, never-ending drive of like relentless excellence? Or is there like a plateau of like, you know what, things have worked well over the last few years, take a few years off and just sort of chill? What is the coaching to someone who maybe feels like they're kind of at a plateau? Like life's good, but maybe there's things that could be better. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's a season where other people are reaching down and pulling you up, right? And that's the season where folks that are on the climb, and I certainly have not arrived, right? Like I still have these goals that I'm reaching for, things that I'm pursuing, right? But there comes a moment where you stop being the person that walks into the room who's looking for the next person who can help you get to the next level. And there's a moment where you start walking into the room and you're looking for the person that you can help, that you can serve. And that's how I try to think of it, is like, if I have accomplished something that I know these other people, that it's their desire, then I feel like one of the things that makes my heart come alive more than anything is not only, not having my own success. Like I like having my own success. I want to continue it, but I've been driven by this principle my entire life. My first business mentor when I was 18 years old told me this. He gave me this Zig Ziglar quote, right? If you help enough people get what they want, you'll have everything you could ever want. And so for me, the drive is I want to help as many people as I possibly can get what they want out of life. And if I do that, I'm constantly going to have a purpose. I'm constantly going to have a mission. I'm constantly going to feel, fulfilled in my journey. And really, it's more than just get what they want. It's specific people who are like you and I, Kenny. Like we want success, material and otherwise, because of the desire to live a life of excellence, to demonstrate to our kids and to provide them with a life that maybe we didn't have. Right. And I think that is truly a noble ambition. I don't think there's anything selfish about me wanting my kids to have even more stuff than I had. It's like this whole thing, you don't want your kids to grow up to be spoiled. I'm like, yeah, I don't want them to grow up to be spoiled, but like, what am I going to do? Like not bless them with things that make them happy, even if only for a moment. I want to bless them. I want to bless my kids. I'm just trying not to make it weird, but if I can help other people do that too,
right?
Like if I can be a part of helping other people do that for their kids, not just bless them with stuff, not just buy them like all the Bluey toys or whatever that, whatever their kids into. Maybe they want all their kids, or maybe I want all 3 of my kids to inherit their own little real estate portfolio that they get to start managing when they're 18. And now they've got, a passive income stream that now they can make decisions about their life that's not anchored in what do I need to do to make sure I have enough. But you can clear that off the table, just get money off the table and say, okay, what am I here for? What's my purpose? What am I supposed to do with my life? And then if that's go out and build a business and make a bunch more money, awesome. If that's go out and serve in a foreign mission field, that's awesome. Whatever, XYZ, it doesn't matter. I want my kids to be in a position where they can do that. And I want to help other fathers be able to give that to their kids, because I know a lot of fathers that that's what they want.
That's right. I've thoroughly enjoyed hearing from your business mind, your faith mind, your fatherhood, family mind. And, as we talked about earlier, it's not like you take off one and you put the other one on. It's who you are. And You've inspired me. I was emotional there for a while. as we kind of wrap up, advice to dads. There's different walks right now that our listeners are in. Maybe they're in the valley, maybe they're in a plateau, maybe they're on a mountaintop. They're just, everything's great. But you have 3 kids at home, a wife, been through hardships. What are just some words of wisdom you can say? And then also I want to ask, like you mentioned Bluey. So not as deep, but like what are some fun things you're doing with your kids right now? Just things that are good pastimes that maybe we can do with our kids too.
Yeah, no, yeah. So the first question about what would I say to fathers that feel like they're failing, essentially, that they feel like they're failing in the work-life balance. They feel like they have to work too hard. Brings them, like, number one, it's like, dude, you're not alone. And I know that sounds like cheesy. It's like, well, but you're really not. I mean, there was a study I read a few years ago. 86% of fathers in America feel like they're failing. And the top 2 reasons have to do with, I don't make enough money to take care of my family the way I want to, or I spend too much time away from my family to take care of them the way that I want to. So you're not alone. You're like normal, right? The fact that you feel the way that you feel is very like normal. But then I would also say, don't judge yourself too harshly. You know where your value is for your family. Draw a line in the sand and say, there is a boundary that I won't cross in terms of work-life balance. But Bedros Keuilian, I love what he says, right? He says, wherever my feet are, that's where I am. So if you're at work, be all in at work, because you'll get more done than if you're spending half your time at work feeling bad about the fact that you're not with your family. And then you're going to end up working more hours because you're not going to be as productive. So just be all in when you're working, so that when you're at home and your feet are there, you can be all in there, right? And then the second little tip is get your diet and your fitness together, especially as you age, because if you have kids, they are going to want energy from you. And if you don't have it to give, because you usually see them and spend time with them later in the day, then you're not going to be as present of a father as you want to. And you're going to think it's because I don't care as much. It's not, dude. It's just because you eat crap all day and you don't work out. Just start eating healthy and work out and get more energy so that you can have more energy to give to your kids in the time that you've allotted to spend with them. That would be the other things. What was the other question? Oh,
just like fun pastimes with your kids. Like what are some things that, we might catch you doing on a weekend, or what do you like to do with your kids right now?
Yeah, Monday nights we do like special family time that I lead. The anchor behind it is I want to teach my kids like core values. We all have a gift and we're stronger if we work together, right? That's one of the values that I want them to have instilled. And so I created this game called Superhero Mission. And basically they got to pick, each of them got to pick their own superhero, like their own superhero identity, what their one superpower was, and all that kind of stuff. And then I just like made up this narrative mission that we would go on, and I would create these scenarios where, like, the kid who could fly, we needed someone who could fly over the canyon and rescue the dog or whatever, and so then it's like everybody has to, like I say, so who could do that? Like, who would be the best superhero to do this, right? And everybody's like, oh, it would be, I think that time it was Isla. They make up these hilarious names. One of them's like Super Cat. Yeah. One of them's like Elephant Roar or something like that. Elephant Roar was her superhero name, but her superpower was that she could fly. Like, they don't get how superheroes work quite yet, but
I love it.
It's things like that, like
that's great.
Speed, that kind of stuff. So finding ways to instill values into them that are not just sitting them down and teaching them like they're in a classroom, but are like connecting values with something that's really fun. Because kids like fun, they like to play. So I just like to play with my kids as much as I can, but find ways to introduce values and teach them through the thing that they are excited about doing. And they ask me to play Superhero Mission like every other day.
I want to play Superhero Mission now. You've instilled that like fire already. Like, I want to tell you my power and give me a scennario I can use it.
That's
and I hope that anyone can steal that idea. I love that. I'm definitely going to be
absolutely. It's not
incorporating something like that.
Maybe one day I'll write a book about it.
Caleb, thanks so much, buddy. Thanks for your time. Tell the audience, if anyone wants to follow you, what's the best way to see what you're up to?
Yeah, so hit me up on Instagram. I mean, I'm all over the place. I'm on LinkedIn, all that stuff. But just so you can only do one thing, right? Just go do one thing to connect with me right now. Go to Instagram. It's at Caleb Investing. Caleb is with a C. Follow me there, and then drop me a DM and let me know that you heard me talking on Kenny's podcast. And that way we can connect.
Perfect. Caleb, thanks again, buddy. Take care.
Awesome. Thanks, Kenny.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Invested Fathers podcast. If you liked this episode, we would love for you to click subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. We appreciate all of your hard work as a father and look forward to our next episode together.